Good day to you, partner. I'm keen, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Hey guys, Weed Solo here, aka the Skeleton King, the Simp King, the professional, the guy who's showing that Summon Zon is as good as MS, and Summon Necro is the second fastest Necro in the game, or third fastest. Well, maybe still as fast as DP. We still never quite tested that, did we? Oh man. Anyway, sorry, so little time, so many summon builds to push to the end game. What am I showing here? I'm showing you my current setup, which is basically the same as before, which is I'm prioritizing Valkyries, so I'm maxing out Pierce and Power Strike, then maxing out the decoy abilities and putting the rest of my points in the Strafe. 1 point wonders as necessary, and Strafe has a pretty good chunk in it. I wanted to show you that my gear now is actually pretty solid, as in I'm only missing basically a +2 Annie and a Wrath off of this version of the build. Now, there are other versions of the build, but I really wanted to take this one to in-game, and I do believe I will be completing a T1 map as fast as a MS player could do it. This is InnoRok. He's a great friend of Necros. By the way, yes, I do have a Tyrael's Might and a Beast now for my Act 3 Static Shock Merc, and yes, decoys are way better. When I actually do a serious video showcasing a speedrun of this version of the build, I will definitely put up some numbers about the damage I believe my decoys are doing now with all of the aura support they have, including the Heart of the Wolverine, which of course I forget to cast in this map, but Inno has one up and we're on the same screen for, enough at the time. And I don't believe decoys are going to be doing much in this map. This is definitely something where I think Valkyries are going to be doing the work, and decoys are there so I don't die. I actually think I do pretty well for never having really played this build seriously in a map before, and I actually do believe that Summon Zon could have a role in group mapping. Now, would it be an important role? What do I say? Let me stipulate. Most groups really only need 1 to 3 people doing actual damage, because that's how good certain P8 damaging builds get. If you have a group that good, then where would the Summon Zon be listed on the list of support builds you'd have? Well, there's a support Barb, he would definitely be higher up. Support Necro, higher up. Support Paladin, higher up. Support Druid, higher up. And then support Sork, higher up. Oh god, we're already running out of spots. Maybe Summon Zon is higher than support Sork. Do you really need an Enchantress? Maybe some P8 build needs it, but then it's not really a P8 damaging build. It's some cheese shit. But I'm sure there is some legit build that really does want an Enchantress to team with them, and then when they have those two together, they just smoke. Although Enchant has been nerfed so much, I doubt many people are spending much time on it. But in this build, we're just doing a DP Necro with my Summons on. My idea is basically this. I'm going to cast some decoys and try to cast some amp. Sounds like what I always do. But in general, I always like to play a support build aggressively, because if you're not at the front of the group, you're not doing enough for your support group, for your group. Now, yes, you're not. Unless you're purely an aura bot. And an aura bot still needs to be right there with the DPS, okay? Because you need to make sure your aura tick, which is 25 frames, is active on the next pack of monsters. So even then, you're probably still slightly ahead of DPS, or at worst, right next to them. If you think you're playing support and you're just sitting behind the DPS, you're actually not helping anybody but yourself. And so that's kind of my thought process. And I thought I did okay trying to play aggressively. Again, without having an offhand for defense or auras, Amazons can be quite squishy, especially without having gear that is optimized for P8 support. And there definitely is a way you could make this build more P8 viable. Would you be able to keep peace? Yeah, I mean, there's some ideas I have, like, dropping FCR, not really casting decoys, because trust me, they're not worth the effort in PA. And then in that case, you would just have, like, Peace and Valkyries. And Valkyries, actually, there'll be times you could see a Valkyrie killing things by themselves. Seriously, they do insane damage. They really do. So if you've got Peace, and then your, Naj Puzzler for blinking, and then, like, on your swap, you have an Infinity or something, maybe. I think trying to actually use Witchwild to cast Amp is too slow. Now, would Wrath work? Yeah, maybe. I think at that point it'd be based on the group. Like, I think if you're relying on a Summons On to cast Amp with Wrath, there's more optimal things your group could be doing. But, like, if that's your best option, you don't have a Necro, or you don't have another way to cast Amp, and, like, Wrath is a pretty good way to do it, then, like, yeah, I could see that working. And then, yeah, you could just run Dungos, Crown of Ages, and even without having an offhand, you could get pretty tanky even with Peace. Tanky enough, especially if you had like a support Barb or something else, somebody else providing you some auras, maybe a support Paladin. Again, there's a lot of great support builds out there, and like I said, I think Amazon would be near the bottom. Basically, better than Assassin, better than Sorceress, and it might be tied with Sorceress. I mean, slow movement is a great ability, but like in a GG group, you don't need defensive abilities too much. Yes, I'm a fan of Decrepify, but Decrepify also was 10 PDR. And yes, I was a fan of Decrep even back in the day when it didn't do that, but that was for me, not for the DPS. It was so I could be aggressive. The DPS didn't need my help to be safe most of the time. Most DPS are like, they can like never die. It's just insane. Or they just randomly vanish. And that's just kind of Diablo 2. And that can happen to anybody. So anyways, talking more about the build and what I'm trying to accomplish, and especially at the end of the season, Woogs and I finally got together. We had our little podcast. It was actually a lot of fun. We got to talk about Rathma, Declone, the changes this season, the positives and the negatives. In the end, I know a lot of players were unhappy with the changes, but I'm actually pretty happy with it. I think Rathma has a lot of issues with how they changed it, but at least it is viable for any player to do it. I do think level 0 to level 1 has problems, but trying to fix that would be a whole nother thing. Level 8 Declone is definitely like an experience in itself, and like that is very cool. Level 8 Rathma is like as hard as level 1 Rathma was last season, which is just bizarre. But in the end, I think it's a success because players were able to farm these things on their own. Do I think level 1 Rathma is too easy? Yes. Do I think level 0 should still give like Annies and Tainted World Shards? No, I don't. Am I glad that players can experience this content? Yes. I still think there's some way to where players need to use level 0 to get good enough to do level 1. Like that's what I want. And I think there's still kind of an issue where a lot of players will just do level 0, which is just like rolling your face on the keyboard and then get what they need and never go back. And like, just for anybody out there, like level 1 Rathma is very easy. It's way easier than Rathma was before. Level 1 Declone is like pretty close. I actually think him moving around makes it easier, but again, that's for that video. You can see it then. We also talked about Diablo 4 for a bit, and that was fun, and I don't see much hope in the game. One word, there's not trading. And that affects the game in PvE and PvP, and it basically forces the game designers into a situation where a player has to get every drop they fucking need. And if you don't understand why, then you don't understand the mindset of an ARPG player. Like, yes, there's problems with trading systems and like JSP, right? But here's the thing, even a poor player will eventually get every piece of gear they need. Maybe not the best, but they'll get it. If there's no trading, then you're gonna basically have to up drop rates and it'll become D3 again. But we'll see. Maybe I'm just being a negative Nancy and they figured out a way to bypass trading without bypassing game integrity. Back to this and Summons On. How do I think Summons On can be as fast as MS with this version of the build? And by this version of the build, I mean a decoy Valkyrie hybrid focused on Valkyries, a source of blink, and then a swap, which is Wrath, okay? There is an idea I have about using Infinity. I'm going to save Infinity for now. Here's why I think it's possible. If I use 15 frames, right, and cast 2 decoys, not 3, that's 30 frames, and then blink, that's 45 frames, and then attack, that's like 60 frames per screen. We'll see, guys. Skelly King out. GG.